So I kid you not, I kind of just had a little bit of a revelation here, or an epiphany. I realized that I was happier when I wasn't working after I gotten fired from my first real quote-unquote job when I had gotten out of the Marine Corps last year. I realized that my quality of life had skyrocketed. I didn't even know. And the reason I didn't know is because it just kind of, fell into place naturally. This guy's turning. Jesus, this person's right. Sorry. But let me get back on point. So, when I was fired, when I first got home, I was pretty depressed about it, obviously. And just so we're clear, I'm of the opinion that I was wrongfully fired. I feel like that they, just decided they didn't like me and they wanted to find a reason to get rid of me, and they found a reason and they got rid of me, right? But during that time period, do you know what I did every single day? I'll tell you exactly what I did. I, budgeted my expenses. I lived absolutely minimalistically. I did the math to how much money I had to spend per month on food to meet my nutrition and to be healthy and happy. And I started to sleep. I started getting an actual quality of sleep every day. I started to get skin exposure every single day. Even during the winter, I was able to get enough sunlight, way more sunlight than the average American consumer is getting. I went to the gym almost every single day, and I had no sores. I had no pains in my back. My shoulders and ankles were feeling better, even though I was walking almost every single day. Some days I was walking over 10 miles without even trying. And, I'm looking at my current quality of life now as I work a 12-hour night shift schedule, and I realized that I had it better before I started working again. I think we Americans get so absolutely confused about what we need in society. We've bought the lie that we need to have this big, expensive house with a certain amount of square feet, and we need to have this many bedrooms, we need to have this many bathrooms, we need to have this, we need to have that, we can't have this, can't have that, we need to have this many vacations, we need to travel, all these sorts of things that cost so much money. And the reason they all cost so much money is because we've ascribed an artificial and inflated value on those things, right? But you know what no one is talking about? Quality of life, health, fitness, the simple things. When I was unemployed, I was getting time and hours outside every single day. I was walking. I was getting easily, 10,000 steps a day. I was actually losing all of the excess fat on my body. And at the time, I thought it was just because of my diet, but it turns out it was also because of my sunlight skin exposure, and it was also because of my sleep schedule. I was finally getting sleep, which, by the way, sleep was something I had a hard time with for a long time because of my, time when I was in the military. They would just keep throwing things in your schedule, and they would keep throwing wrenches in your sleep, and you just kind of had to deal with it because that's the military culture. But there was a solid 6 months where I was unemployed, and I was getting everything that the body I needed, and I felt incredible. And the only reason that I'm working right now is because I have this agenda, or I have this ideology that if I work somehow now for a certain number of years, and I save every nickel and penny, and I put it all away into my investments, into my portfolio, which, by the way, that's a good idea. That's good advice. You want to do that with your money anyways, because otherwise it's going to lose all of its spending power to inflation. But my point is that I had everything I needed right then and there. And here's the thing, doesn't really cost that much money to actually just live. Everything that costs so much only costs so much because we have ascribed artificial value to it. Like, here's a good example, the housing market. Part of the reason the housing market has gotten out of control, of course, is that, the dollar is no longer backed by gold. It's no longer backed by a valuable asset, right? It's backed by debt now, and it has been since the 70s. Sure, that's a huge part. But another big reason that the housing market is just so untenable and so expensive, ultimately, is because of one simple thing. It's been artificially inflated by, massive corporations buying up the housing market, artificially driving up the value of homes, making it more difficult for new buyers and new homeowners to purchase homes that are affordable, that they can afford working a 9-to-5, entry-level job or position. That's absolutely a huge part of the issue. That's a huge part of the, of the pie, so to speak. And, goodness gracious, back in the 1960s, you could buy a home with a high school diploma entry-level job, working 40 hours a week. You could do it. And you could do it far more quickly back then than you could today. Back then, you could do it within 5 to 10 years, presuming that you're just working the minimum amount of hours, and you're not working like overtime. Today you're looking at 15 to 30 year mortgages, and the amount of money you lose in the compound interest that the bank makes off of the principal that they get for letting you borrow all that money to purchase the home, it's insanity. It's a huge amount of expenses that you never really see that money come back. Obviously it's you have the home, you own the home, that's a good deal. It's good to have a place to actually be able to lay and rest and just exist. But our current system of America, and for the average working guy, it's not tenable anymore. It's not tenable. Okay? You don't have your necessities met. All right? Food, real food, is too expensive. You have to budget every single meal. You have to be careful and concerned about where you spend your money over the long term. Otherwise, you end up spending too much money on food as an individual. And if you have a family of 4 and you want to feed your kids a proper diet, and I'm talking about beef, eggs, cheese, that's going to be far more expensive than just feeding them processed crap, unfortunately. Now, obviously, if you love your kids, you're going to do it. But, we're all so brainwashed by the system about materialism, about consumerism, about just buying the new thing and having the nice good-looking car. And, goodness gracious, I remember having this conversation with this one guy. He had purchased a $10,000 pickup truck, and I asked him how many miles did he get to the gallon in that vehicle, and he said, "Oh, it's pretty bad." And I was like, I bought a 2007 Prius hybrid for $1,200, and it was a good deal, right? No, full disclosure, that was a damn good deal, and I'm glad I got it. But the fact is that I purchased my vehicle for nearly a tenth of what you purchased for yours. I get better gas per mile, I get better mile per gallon, right, than your vehicle. And, it's very likely my vehicle is going to last me a bit longer than yours. And it's costing me a whole heck of a lot less. I'm not saying we as Americans need to get into the position of, getting used to a sick society, adjusting to a sick or broken system. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we really could live with less in the system that we currently live in. We could actually thrive in a society where we do just take in the necessities. But the elite don't like that. They want us broke. They want us tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to them for life. They want us inflamed. They want us sick. They want us to basically be docile, content, and easy to control. And they want us to hate each other and think it's each other's fault rather than theirs. And I mean, goodness, going back to the beginning of this video, the epiphany I had is that I had a more fulfilling life when I wasn't working. And I was able to actually sleep and get sun every day. Just existing, thinking. I actually read books back then. I actually went out and had conversations with people. I didn't feel the need to speed anymore because I was no longer in a rush to be anywhere, because I was not on anyone's deadline. I was on my deadline. And I think we need to find a way back to that in our society. We have to find a way back to that. If you can't do it on the macro level for everyone, you got to find a way to do it for you, because I think that life is far more enjoyable when you're getting enough sleep and sunlight, because the last 8 months I've been working have not been good, to be frank. I'm far more irritable. I'm far more easily angered and frustrated, precisely because I'm not getting enough sleep or enough sunlight, and I'm chronically stressed out. Not to mention all the sitting is just another indirect problem, and I think it's causing me issues that I didn't know I even had, until, of course, you isolate and aggravate those issues. But, I'm really starting to wonder if maybe the best way to live my life in this current era we live in is just to try and live minimalistically, because I was getting a lot more out of life when I wasn't working. I do mean that.